I am Sydney. And I am 29 years old. My housewarming party was supposed to be the night my family finally celebrated my success. Instead, it turned into the night my own father looked me straight in the eye across the granite island and erased me from his life with one sentence. The house was full of fresh flowers, expensive appetizers, and fake smiles. I waited until everyone had a glass of champagne, set my glass down, and said as calmly as I could, "This is my home." For half a second, no one moved. My mother's hand froze. My sister stared at me like she was watching a movie. My father leaned back, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. He did not ask if I was happy. He just said, "You need to give Brittany the keys and move out by Monday." That was it. Years of doing everything right, wiped out between the toast and the cake. I did not scream. I did not cry. I reached into my pocket. Before I tell you what I pulled out of my pocket and how I silenced the entire room, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. I am Kelsey Grant, and I am 29 years old. Christmas Eve was supposed to be the night my family found out they were finally getting a grandchild. Instead, it turned into the night my own father looked me straight in the eye across the dinner table and erased me from his life. With one sentence. The house was full of polished silverware, expensive wine, and fake smiles. I waited until everyone had taken a bite of prime rib, set my fork down, and said as calmly as I could, "I am pregnant." For half a second, no one moved. My mother's hand froze around her glass. My sister stared at me like she was watching a movie. My father leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes cold in a way I had never seen before. He didn't ask who the father was. He didn't ask if I was happy or healthy. He didn't ask anything. He just said a few quiet, careful words about my baby that I won't repeat here. Then added, "You are not part of this family anymore. You are out of the will." That was it. Years of doing everything right, wiped out between the salad and dessert. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached under my chair, took the small, perfectly wrapped present I had brought just for him, and set it in the middle of the table. Then I pushed back my chair, wished everyone a Merry Christmas, and walked out of that house. Before I tell you what he said next, and what he did when he opened that box, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I pulled out my phone. It was not the keys to the house. It was the device that controlled them. I did not look at my father. I did not look at my sister, who was standing by the fireplace, already looking at the mantel, as if deciding where to put her framed photos. I walked past them, the click of my heels on the hardwood echoing like gunshots in the sudden silence. I marched to the massive front door, the one I had spent 3 months custom ordering, and threw it wide open. The wind off the lake was brutal. It rushed into the warm, lavender-scented living room, carrying the freezing bite of early November. The candles on the dining table flickered and died. Guests shivered. My mother gasped, clutching her cashmere wrap tighter around her throat. "Get out," I said. My voice was not loud. It was flat. It was the voice of a landlord speaking to a squatter. My father let out a short, disbelief-filled laugh. He stepped toward me, his face flushing that familiar shade of purple that used to make me cower. "Sydney, close that door. You are being hysterical. This is exactly why you cannot handle a property like this. You are too emotional. Give Brittany the keys, and we can discuss your visitation rights later." Visitation rights. To my own house. The audacity was so sharp it almost felt physical. But I did not flinch. I tapped the screen of my phone. I opened the smart home security app. I held the screen up so they could see the glowing blue list of authorized users. "I am not discussing anything." "Thomas," I said. I used his first name. I saw the shock register in his eyes. He hated that. He demanded respect. even as he stripped me of my dignity. My mother, Angela, stepped in then. She put on her soft, reasonable face, the one she used to gaslight me for 2 decades. Sydney, honey, please. We are just discussing options. Brittany is fragile right now. She needs the water views to heal. You are so strong. You can live anywhere. Why are you being so selfish with your success? There it was. The weaponized empathy. The idea that my strength was a punishment, and her weakness was a currency. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and realized I felt absolutely nothing. The cord had been cut. I am not asking again, I said. I looked down at my phone. I tapped the user labeled, Parents. I hit remove. I tapped the user labeled, Brittany. I hit remove. The app processed for a second, then flashed a green confirmation. Access revoked. Your gate codes are gone. I told them. The smart locks have been reset. If you are not off my property in 2 minutes, the silent alarm triggers a call to the sheriff's department. And since the sheriff is a personal client of mine, I doubt he will be sympathetic to trespassers. Brittany made a small, wounded noise, looking at our parents with wide, wet eyes. Do something, she whispered. She is kicking me out of my sanctuary. My father lunged for the door, trying to slam it shut. But I stepped into the frame. He stopped inches from me. For a second, I thought he might hit me. I almost wished he would. It would make the restraining order easier. You are making a mistake you cannot come back from, he snarled. I looked him dead in the eye. I made the mistake years ago when I gave you a spare key to my life. I am correcting it now. I pointed to the driveway. Go. They left. It was not a dignified exit. My mother was sobbing about how I had ruined the family. Brittany was hyperventilating. My father was cursing. But they walked out into the cold. I watched their taillights disappear down the long, winding driveway. Then, I closed the heavy oak door. I turned the deadbolt. I listened as the electronic lock whirred and engaged. Silence. Absolute. Heavy silence. It was just me, the half-eaten appetizers, and the cold air lingering in the hallway. I was alone. And for the first time in 29 years, I was safe. I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. The house was finally quiet. No clinking glasses. No passive-aggressive compliments. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic lapping of the lake against the dock outside. I walked into the kitchen and poured the expensive champagne down the sink. I did not want to drink it. It tasted like desperation. I walked through the empty rooms of my sanctuary. I did not buy this house because it was a good investment, or because the granite countertops were imported. I bought it because it was a fortress. I bought it because the lake creates a natural moat, and the driveway is long enough that I can see anyone coming a mile away. Growing up, our home was a minefield. You never knew which floorboard would creak and set off my mother's migraines, or which bill would arrive and trigger my father's silent, terrifying rages. I spent 18 years walking on eggshells. This house was supposed to be the place where I could finally stomp my feet. So why did I invite them? Why did I send the gate code to the very people who taught me to be afraid of footsteps? It is the invisible chain of the survivor. That is the only way I can explain it. When you grow up as the spare part in a machine built for someone else, you spend your life trying to prove you are essential. I thought, if I became successful enough, if I became undeniable enough, the dynamic would shift. I thought if I built a beautiful castle and lowered the drawbridge, they would walk in and finally see me as a queen, not a servant. I thought my success could be the glue that fixed the broken vase of our family. I was wrong. They did not see a queen. They saw a resource. They did not see a home. They saw a spare battery they could drain to keep Brittany's chaotic life running. I sat on the white sofa, the one Brittany would have spilled red wine on within a week, and looked out at the dark water. I remembered being 12 years old, sitting at the kitchen table while my parents planned a trip to Disney World. They told me I was too old to enjoy it. So I would be staying with Aunt Madeline while they took Brittany. I remembered nodding. I remembered saying thank you. I remembered the feeling of being heavy, of being a burden that needed to be parked somewhere so the real family could be happy. That feeling had followed me for 17 years. It drove me to graduate early. It drove me to work 80-hour weeks until I made partner at my firm. It drove me to buy this house. I was trying to buy my way onto the family vacation. But tonight, standing in the cold air with my finger hovering over the delete button on my security app, the chain had snapped. I realized I was not a burden. I was the engine. And without me, their machine was going to grind to a halt. I went to the bedroom, my bedroom, the master suite, with the view I had earned, and crawled under the duvet. I did not sleep well. I lay there, listening to the wind, knowing that the silence was temporary. My father was a man who viewed boundaries as a declaration of war. My mother was a woman who weaponized guilt like a scalpel. They were not going to let me walk away with the keys to their retirement plan without a fight. The sun would rise in a few hours, and when it did, I knew the bombardment would begin. I closed my eyes and breathed in the smell of fresh paint and lake water. Let them come. This time, the castle was fortified. The sun came up over the lake in a wash of pale gray and bruised purple. It was beautiful, but I did not have time to admire it. My phone had vibrated off the nightstand and onto the floor. The bombardment had arrived. I picked it up. 47 notifications. Missed calls from my mother. Missed calls from my father. A string of texts from Brittany that ranged from pleading to vicious. But it was the long, block text essay from my mother, Angela, that made me sit on the edge of the bed and put on my reading glasses. Sydney, I did not sleep at all last night. I hope you are proud of yourself. Your sister is in a very dark place. She has been crying for 6 hours straight. You know how fragile she is since the breakup. She told me she doesn't see the point of going on if she doesn't have a safe space to heal. You have 4 bedrooms. Sydney, you live alone. You are strong enough to handle a studio apartment or a condo in the city. You always have been. But Brittany needs the water. She needs the peace. By keeping that house to yourself, you are actively choosing to hurt her. If she does something terrible, that will be on your conscience forever. I read it twice. In the past, this text would have sent me into a spiral of panic. I would have called her, apologizing, offering to pay for a therapy retreat, offering to let Brittany stay just for the weekend, which would turn into forever. But today, I read it like an autopsy report. This is the trap of normalized cruelty. It is a concept I learned in therapy, but I never truly saw it until this moment. My parents do not see themselves as villains. In their minds, they are the balancers of the scale. They believe that because I am capable, I owe them my stability. They believe that because Brittany is a mess, she deserves my resources. They have normalized the idea that my pain is the necessary fuel for her comfort. They disguise their favoritism as fairness. They call it equity. Sydney has too much. Brittany has too little. So we will take from Sydney to give to Brittany. They do not care that I worked 80-hour weeks to get too much, or that Brittany spent her 20s partying to get too little. To them, my boundaries are not self-protection. They are acts of aggression. I scrolled down. There was a text from my father. Thomas, you have until noon to send the new gate codes. If you do not, I am removing you from the family trust. I am cutting you out of the will. You will be dead to us. I almost laughed. The family trust. The trust was a checking account that had been drained 5 years ago to pay for Brittany's second DUI legal fees. There was no money. There was only the idea of money that he used to keep us in line. He was threatening to cut me off from a dry well. I did not reply. I did not type out a defense. I did not remind them that I paid for their anniversary cruise last year. I simply took a screenshot of the texts. Then, I opened my laptop. If they wanted to talk about finances, we could talk about finances. But we were not going to do it over text message. We were going to do it with receipts. I logged into my bank account. I logged into the credit monitoring service I had signed up for 3 months ago but hadn't checked in a while. I wanted to see exactly what I was risking by being dead to them. What I found made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just a dry well. It was a sinkhole. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. The credit report was a map of a life I had never lived. There were 3 credit cards opened in my name in the last 6 months, all maxed out. There was a personal loan for $50,000 taken out from a predatory online lender. There were inquiries from luxury car dealerships. But the detail that made my stomach turn over was the billing address listed for these accounts. It was not my old apartment in the city. It was not my parents' house. It was this house. The lake house. I had only closed on this property 3 weeks ago. I had been in negotiations for months, keeping it quiet. But I had told my mother about the location during a rare moment of weakness when I thought she might actually be happy for me. She hadn't just been happy. She had been taking notes. My hands did not shake. The shock had burned off, leaving behind a cold, crystalline rage. This was not just favoritism. This was a felony. I picked up my phone. I did not call my parents. I did not text Brittany to scream. I opened my contacts and pressed the speed dial for Connor. Connor is my fiancé. He is also a forensic accountant for the state prosecutor's office. I had kept him away from the housewarming party because I didn't want him to see my family's behavior. I was ashamed of them. I was ashamed that I couldn't handle them. But now, I didn't need a partner. I needed a shark. Sydney. His voice was thick with sleep. It's 6 a.m. Is everything okay? No, I said. I need you to come to the lake. Bring your laptop. And bring the fraud affidavit forms. I'm on my way. He did not ask questions. He hung up and started driving. That is the difference between love and ownership. Connor shows up to solve the problem. My family shows up to be the problem. While I waited, I stopped replying to the barrage of texts from my family. I did not block them yet. I needed the evidence. I screenshotted every threat, every guilt trip, every mention of Brittany's fragile state. I saved them to a cloud drive my father couldn't access. Then, I went to the kitchen and made coffee. I drank it standing up, watching the driveway. When Connor's car pulled in, I didn't feel relief. I felt like a general welcoming reinforcements. He walked in, saw my face, and didn't try to hug the stiffness out of my shoulders. He sat at the island, opened his laptop, and cracked his knuckles. Show me, he said. Over 4 hours. Connor and I uncovered the truth. My identity hadn't just been damaged, it had been systematically exploited to fund a lifestyle Brittany couldn't afford. Loans in my name lined up perfectly with her Instagram posts flaunting a new wardrobe. Then Connor showed me the geotags. Photos taken on my dock. In my living room. Before I'd even moved in. She wasn't just stealing my credit, she was presenting my house as hers. It all clicked. My parents' panic wasn't about helping Brittany heal. She had leveraged my name and property to secure loans and build a false image of success. If I exposed her, the fraud would unravel, and criminal charges would follow. My parents weren't protecting her. They were trying to keep her out of prison. Instead of filing the police report immediately, I summoned them to the house under the pretense of handing over the keys. They arrived confident, entitled, convinced I'd given in. At the door, I handed my father a manila envelope. Inside wasn't a deed or lease, it was a draft police report detailing identity theft, wire fraud, and trespassing. Naming Brittany and them as accomplices. The power shifted instantly. I gave them one option: repay every dollar of debt in my name within 24 hours or face prosecution. They paid selling cars and jewelry not to save me, but to save themselves. When it was over, I changed the locks for the final time. Not out of fear, but for closure. Sitting by the lake that evening, in silence and calm, I understood something. Clearly, cutting them off wasn't failure. It was freedom. I didn't lose a family that day. I gained a future.